Out here in San Antone Bay, Chickenfoot, all the little reefs that are out here in San Antone Bay. If you fish these, you know exactly where I'm talking about. We've been reef hopping still, trout still hanging on those. Uh, this past week was pretty good for the most part for our trout bite. Water temps are upper 80s, getting into the low 90s if you're fishing past noon. But one way that you can kind of extend that is getting around these reef beds, especially like the ones up here in San Antone Bay. If you fished up there, there's several of them that go all the way down towards Seadrift and Ostwell area, all back down in there. Great location, and several of these are very long. If you fished over there, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you can just work your way down these until you come across, you know, a group of fish and just kind of hang out there and catch them until they stop eating, and then just keep working down. You'll come across some more. Uh, but that's kind of been what we've done this past week is working those reefs. Uh, Plenty of fish that are hanging on, and once the trout bite finally kind of dies off, then we'll get up here on the shoreline here, across from on the backside of Mustang Lake. Work this area back up in here. You can wade all that. Nice hard pack. Been finding some redfish that are scattered up and down this area here. Haven't come across any big groups yet. That's something we'll start to see here in the next 2 to 5 weeks as we get closer to October. These fish will start grouping up by size, your redfish, and as that goes and does its thing, you just kind of locate and kind of fish an area, and all of a sudden you'll come across a pot of those, and then you can take advantage of that. Our tides have been pretty decent for the past week. They've leveled off in there. Past week we've had some scattered showers here and there that kind of affected the fishing on any given day, but nothing just traumatic by any means. You may have to duck and dodge a little bit this past week, depending on where you were. We did that on a couple of days. We had to kind of move around just to get ourselves opportunity to not get rained on or get away from the lightning on top of that. But that said, this is, like I say, it's pretty good. This past week was pretty good as far as our trout and our redfish bite. And as we trend into September, we're not very far away. Probably another 6 days, 7 days, we'll be into September. It's coming. Fall's not far away. Got a little bit of a disturbance that possibly may turn into something that's out in the Caribbean at the moment. We'll see what happens over the next 7 to 10 days with that thing. But as for now, our weather patterns have been very good. They've held well. Wind have been super low in the mornings. We've had super great runs to be able to get to locations without getting beat up. And it's been that way. So if you've had a chance to get out on the water this past week, I'm sure you took advantage of that if you were. And I would suspect that you had some pretty decent days fishing. Now, I say we just fished on the couple of days that we were up in here. We just worked the reefs on this, walking down those reef beds, finding and locating trout that are up and down that. And then, once our trout bite died off, we tried to went and find some redfish. And that's been our tactic. And that's probably what's going to continue on through the end of August and then 1st of September. Unless we get some cooler weather that'll change some stuff. It'll change your water temp. But right now, our water temp's starting out in the upper 80s and trending into the low 90s. So find that deeper water. You can get on those flats. Again, your structure that you're looking for is shale, hard packed sand, grass. Again, the grass is the common denominator no matter what time of year that you fish. If you're in and around that kind of stuff, whether you're up here in the San Antone Bay area or Mesquite Bay or down in the Estes Flat area or Coconut, whatever, that's the areas that you really want to kind of target, have that deeper water access to it, and you can continue to find your fish. Now, the baits, we're in the new moon. We're going to be on the backside of that new moon here this upcoming week into the transition days. But this past week, we threw a lot of 5 and 6 inch baits, so it was a lot of the Pav lures in their 5 and 6 inch baits that they have. The knock and tail lures, down south supermodels were a good choice this past week. Through a few of the coastal brew baits. Main colors that we kind of focused on, once again, the water temp or water clarity was really good this past week, especially with winds not being as much as what they could have been. So a lot of calm mornings, a lot of clean water, a little bit of stain depending on where you fished, based on that structure that was underneath you. But, we, the white ice and the bone diamond and any of those particular brands did really well for us. Mirror Lure Little Johns and the XL. I think we threw a little bit more of the XL than we did the Little Johns, which produced pretty good. Now, we had to go through a lot of smaller fish. There is that in the systems, depending on where you're at. A lot of younger fish are in there. Those 12 to 14s. We caught a lot of those, but we would catch 16s to 18s as well that were mixed in there with them. Then you'd come across, depending on where you were on a reef, you would find some better fish that were more consistent and more concentrated in some of those areas, doing really well with those. In the down south, it was the Big Papa, the same ones. Watermelon Red, Twisted Tea. We threw every once in a while. We put a burner shad in there and see if we catch some decent fish with those. And a lot of that came with the smaller fish we were catching with those smaller baits. But when we went to the 4 to 6 inch baits, that's when we started catching a little bit better fish on a more consistent basis. So we stuck with that tactic throughout the week and had some pretty good days out here on the water. Again, San Antonio Bay is one of those. If you get caught out in it, I think it was Saturday when it's kind of one of those storms were kind of hanging off out in the Gulf, and then had some develop back in shoreline that moved back across. So that kind of changed the dynamics pretty quickly. So we had to kind of run away from that. So, San Antonio Bay is not protected at all, especially when you get those big storms come up. So it gets pretty rough really fast. So you kind of have to have a contingency in place for you to find you protected. So that's when we kind of started working the shorelines here all the way down to the Ostwell area. Just kind of pick some spots, just kind of leapfrogged down the shoreline, fishing the edges where the shallower water kind of gets off into that little bit deeper water. We were working that knee to thigh deep water and doing fairly well. And then as the morning would progress, we'd start moving out to where the drops are and get out there on those edges like that. So that was our game plan for the week, and for the most part, it did pretty well. The minors this past week did really well for us. A lot of production out of the minor time frame, and the bite would continue for the most part, maybe anywhere from 30 to an hour, minute, past what the minor time frame would end. So that kind of indicated to us that those bites were maybe happening just a little bit later in those time frames. But that's the great thing about when you start working those types of time frames. You can give yourself about 3 hours in a particular area in and around that, and typically you will do pretty well. Nothing major as far as big fish go. So the redfish were all in the 18 to 22 range. They were solid fish. Again, our trout were anywhere from 12 to 18, and plenty of those to be had. Just working like those. That out here in the chicken foot shell bar that's out here, this little spot that's right here, you got that deep water access that's right there next to it that the ICW runs through. And so we worked those edges pretty well and did okay. So that's going to be kind of our tactic this upcoming week. We will continue to go down that path, that same way, and see if that trend continues for us. The Allen Bight area, all the way down to the Mott, it's another great area. A lot of hard-packed sand, a lot of scattered grass, lots of opportunity that were in there. We just worked all this edge out here on the grass. It was kind of early morning. We're getting there, and we're finding our fish up kind of shallow. I say shallow, in that thigh-deep water, just kind of working that area along there. You can find the little satellite grass patches along the shorelines. And again, this is one of those other areas we just kind of leapfrogged down. You'd work 200 or 300 yard stretch, move on down 500 or 600 yards, jump back out and work another section. Main thing we were always looking for bait working in the area, and that was not a problem. But then your structure becomes critical at that point in time, and paying attention to what your water temps are. So again, as the morning progressed, and there was a couple of days where we had some super nice overcast rain in the area, so it really kind of kept the mornings kind of cool for us. So it was really nice. It almost felt like October, so you kind of check and make sure that you were still in August and not October, but those mornings were a pleasure to be out on the water when we got those opportunities, temperature-wise anyway. But we just kind of work down here, and of course here, when you get close to the motts, you got a lot of shell that's working down through this area here. You've got some deeper water access. It's right there close to it because you're on the Aransas Bay side. And just kind of work these little coves and work these little edges back around in here, and we'd pick up some fish. Not a big number, but solid amount of fish that were cruising up and down these shorelines. Pick up a redfish here and there. Work down in the mott all the way up to the point of the big island. If you fish this area here, you've got a nice little shallow part edge that's up there. You've got some really hard packed, again, scattered grass that's in there. And the section this right here that I really like about it, that the grass is just kind of scattered out. And you got patches of it. You got potholes that are scattered in and amongst those. And that's where we would locate some fish in and around that kind of stuff. Close to where the shell was, but they weren't really on top of it. But they were close to it. And then we get here on the point and then get on the back side, work back down into the long reef bend area, because all the structure that's in here is exactly what we want. So you could work the deeper edge on the bar that's out there, and then there's I think the couple of days that we did fish up here on the bend, you could get all that in there and just work that area pretty well, and fish those guts that are back in there and do all the kind of stuff that goes with that. So that was what our plan was when we worked these areas here. Just find that grass, get on that hard pack, work your baits in and around that area. Again, the bigger baits we were throwing the majority of the time. Would stick the knock and tail in there, the 4-inch, the original size down south. Same flavors, white ice, bone diamond has been pretty good for us. Watermelon red, big papa, twisted tea, all those different particular flavors have all been pretty well for us. We sprinkled some of the pav lures in there on top of that as well. The little softy did pretty good for us. The one thing that we've noticed on some of the redfish that some clients kept this past week when we were cleaning those, bunch of little bitty shad. I mean, they're like maybe 1.5 to 2 inch at length. I mean, nothing big. So once we kind of saw that, it's like, okay, well, let's see if these smaller baits like the soft dine, the double D, was all in that same kind of pattern, the little softy for the pav lures. All that did pretty well for us for the most part. So we were working those over a little bit deeper water. Throw that out there in probably that 3 to 5 foot of water and just kind of let those things slow sink down there right on top of that grass and just work those. And the production-wise was pretty good for us. Again, a lot of the minor time frame was when we were spinning it in those areas, and then that bite would extend just a little bit for us. Didn't happen every time. But the few days we did, we had a little bit extended bite for us. So that was these types of areas. That's what we really kind of focused on, and that's what we did. And for the most part, our production was pretty good. Kind of going back to some regular fishing area for me here on the front side of where the old Redfish Lodge used to sit out there on that peninsula. It's a lot of good grass. It's on that edge right there, right up from Copano Village, right here on the point. All that area there. Now, if you're wading through this area here, when you come around that little point right there in front of the Redfish Lodge, there's a lot of debris that's in the water there. So if you're wading that, just make sure you're super careful. There's lots of rebar and concrete and all that kind of crap that's in the bottom in this area here. So you have to kind of wade your way through it cautiously, but it's very fishable. And there's been fish that's been hanging on it. Now, again, not great numbers. But you've got those, and of course you got the little cut through there's right there, and we've kind of fished the front half of these little islands that go that. Then I like to get here on the point itself and just work all the way out to where the cut through is. It comes out of Copano into Port Bay. There's a old duck blind that's out there on the very tip of it, and you can fish probably another 30 yards past that before you really start to see a difference in your depth of water. But you can go real far out here. Get on the back side, and you got a decent little drop that's on this side. So, a couple of days we had some north winds, so it set up really good for us. Then we had some, northeast winds that kind of affected that as well. So, but we got to fish a little bit different way. So, in those, again, the same thing, our pattern and everything kind of set up the same way. We found fish pretty shallow early in the morning. You're getting out on the water. Sun's not popping out till like right at 7 o'clock, maybe a little past. But if you're getting on the water by 6:30, you still got some pretty decent darkness, and we tied on a couple of topwater baits to see if we could get some action with that early in the mornings, and we did. Mostly it was just tail slaps and swirls at it, and if we had multiple people with us that had plastics on, then we did pretty good throwing in right behind those and catching those fish that weren't really aggressive enough. Now, the one thing that kind of trended for us, once more of those little storms kind of popped up later in the week, as we got toward the weekend and stuff, the bite was not super aggressive by any means. It was pretty light bite, and of course we get back in here where the old pier is from the Redfish Lodge, fish this little flat, all back in here. Good structure that's in there. It's a little bit more mushy here as opposed to being out there on the point. But we found redfish that were back in this area here. Not big numbers by any means. And then, of course, you can kind of slide back here into the backside of Pete's Bend, this area all back in here. There was enough water to do that. And just kind of work these edges out here. And then you come back around and work this point as you go back into Italian Bend. You have to kind of move around. You got a nice little flat that's on this outer edge that's out there. We found some fish that were on that. Again, same baits, same size. We were throwing that 4 to 6 inch size baits in multiple different flavors. The down souths, the pav lures, the knock and tail lures, sprinkled in the double D in there. I mentioned just a minute ago the topwater baits was okay, but the majority of our opportunities came off our plastics and throwing those and getting those baits down in front of those fish's eyes, especially as the morning progressed, as it started getting around that 11 or 12 o'clock time frame. Water temps are starting to heat up. We are starting to get into those low 90s as you get past noon, and with not a lot of wind, it becomes pretty difficult, pretty gets tough. So, and there was a couple of days where once we got past that time frame, we had to really grind to locate, and then of course we get back down in here in Italian Bend, work the mouths of these back lake mouths that are in here, and just kind of worked our way down the shoreline in that area there. So it was a pretty broad area that we covered back in here, but did we find fish at every location we stopped? No, we didn't. So, but we would spend plenty of time to really work the area to see if there was something that was a little bit more better than other as far as the style of bait and the profile of bait, which again, the majority of the baits that we were throwing were on the bigger side. And being in the new moon, we took advantage of that, and we had some pretty solid days for the most part. There was not any one particular bait color-wise that really stood out. So most of the trips we had plenty of people where we could throw multiple different flavors of baits and sizes to get in there to see if there was one particular pattern that developed a little better than others. But like I say, it was more in the 4 to 5 inch range that did the best for us as far as that size and profile. And so we just kind of stuck with that. One color probably did the best out of any of the locations that we fished this past week was probably the Big Papa. And the reason why is because we had just, like I mentioned, we had really low winds in the mornings. So water clarity wasn't like gin clear unless you're fishing over a big old huge grass flat that had tons of grass on it that keeps that water filtered out. But all this out here, structure-wise, you got more sand, scattered grass, that type in shale. So that water had just a little bit of stain to it. So that Big Papa really kind of stood out for us. And, of course, you can get that in the Big Smooth from the down south. You can get that in the original size from the down south and all the way down to the burner shad in the down south. Then we just kind of crossed that over reference-wise to the other baits that were pretty close to it. The knock and tail, the one flavor that did really good for us was the greenback on it. Did pretty good. And then, which I mentioned earlier, the little softy. And we did pretty well with it. So that was our plan. That's kind of what we stuck to this past week. And for the most part, it did pretty well for us. Like I say, nothing knocked it out of the park, but it was consistent. And that's what we were really looking for. So pay attention to what you got weather-wise coming up. We've got, like I mentioned earlier, a little bit of disturbances down out in the Caribbean, and we won't know anything probably for another 7 to 10 days what kind of path if that thing is going to take, and hopefully it'll dissipate before anything takes place, or maybe not even develop. But something to keep your eye on and just to be aware of.